Hello and welcome to another edition of the Talking City podcast with myself, Alex James, now Chief City writer Simon Bajkowski, here to reflect on what was ultimately a disappointing day out at Wembley for City, for yourself,
I had
for
a
the
lovely time.
for the travelling supporters. Well, you look like you're having a lovely time on Football Focus. I'll give you that. So
representing the company very nicely.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had a lovely time until the journey home, and because the last train was at 9 o'clock, which was, what was it? Like 2.5 hours after the game ended. So you sort of think you'd have enough time to do your work and get out. Time got on a bit. I thought I had an hour to get back, and it's like 40 minutes to get back. So fine. Then we went down Wembley Way. Everyone stopped. Police cordon. I assume it's because like every single Palace fan will have been on the tube, and so unlike other times they've played, it was like a lot busier. So I ended up having to run for the train, but
Made it though.
Felt like I'd been to the gym for the week. Yeah,
And made it.
Yeah. It was all smooth sailing, really.
Lovely stuff. Which it wasn't on the pitch.
No, it was chaos.
It was chaos when the team was announced as well.
It felt like a wild ride of a day, didn't it? Like it was chaos from the moment the team dropped, and you were like, "Sorry, what is that 11?" And then like, and where is everyone else? Where's him? Where's it? Like it was, obviously we didn't know that Mateo Kovacic would be injured and so not in the squad. Very big calls not to include Rico Lewis and James McAtee in the squad.
Absolutely. I still...
Yeah.
I was going to say I'm speechless, but I'm not speechless. I've got a very strong view that they should have been in the squad. But I just find it remarkable to not put either of them in.
And I feel like, I don't know, I'm very conscious that like we're the local paper, and so we're a bit more, maybe, we're not biased towards like the local academy products, but just the circumstances really of two people who have given a lot this season and been in a lot of squads. Like it's not just any other game, is it, to say, oh, you're not playing today. If neither of them were in the squad against Bournemouth on Tuesday, it would be a surprise, but it wouldn't be monumental. Whereas now you look at that and you think, well, Lewis must be wondering what he's done wrong.
Yeah.
And McAtee must be thinking, well, that's made my mind up, I'm leaving.
Yeah, I would have thought so. And you would hope that Pep has had discussions and explanations with them, but you wouldn't bank on it. And like I think you said earlier, Rico Lewis, we're not sure if when he's been available, if he's ever not been in a squad.
No.
And to drop him, I mean, there's an argument to start him in the game, let alone not have him in the squad altogether.
But that's it. Like, I don't think, we're not saying, well, both of them should have started, but like both of them should have been in the squad.
I think so, yeah.
And like Claudio Echeverri comes on for his debut. He's included in the squad for the first time ever in an FA Cup final, and then makes his debut in an FA Cup final.
Which is probably...
Does quite well. Lively. Still a mad decision. Still crazy. Like, it might be the start of Echeverri making 500 appearances for City, and everyone can say, well, you knew, Pep knew, starting him playing him in an FA Cup final, he knew what talent he had. Might be the last time we see him in a City shirt other than the Club World Cup. Like, he might not play again for them. He might go on loan, and then that's that.
Lost in the loan system.
And I just think for what leaving McAtee and Lewis kind of, especially McAtee, brings, because there's surely no way that he stays now. It was just a huge decision to say, I'm putting Rice, Kusanov and Echeverri on my bench because I feel sorry for them that they've been left out previously.
Yeah, that's just mad, isn't it? That's a mad pity. I mean, at least he brought Echeverri on.
Yeah.
And as you say, I actually thought he looked quite inventive, and I've been desperate to see him play anyway. But to not put McAtee, who has, I don't know if he's played every FA Cup round, he might have.
Well, he was suspended for the semi.
But
also he started 3 of the last 5 league games, including Palace, where he started and scored, and they won. And then Rico Lewis
started that game as well, didn't he? I think he did.
I think so, yeah. And also was a surprise selection to start at Wembley in the semi and scored after 2 minutes. So, like, no player has scored more for City in the FA Cup this season than McAtee, and Lewis scored in the semi, and yet both of them are sort of watching from the stands. And it's fine if you're like, oh, we've got an amazing squad. We've got so much talent on this pitch and in this squad that we can't find room for you. I'm sorry. Like, we've got prime Riyad Mahrez, Leroy Sané on the bench instead.
Yeah.
But instead you're saying, I've got 3 guys who are good. They might be better than you. They might not be, but I feel sorry for them because they've not been picked recently. So
that's the circumstances behind it, isn't it? If you're Rico Lewis, who's been involved in 47 of 50 or whatever it is, squads this season, started as many games as he hasn't probably.
Yeah.
To not be involved at all in the FA Cup final is a really weird decision. McAtee has been like, I think we were at that Palace game and bam, suddenly he was in the team.
Yeah.
And
his first league start.
Yeah. And you can almost understand him not being in the squad more if he hadn't been in the squad so much in the 6 weeks prior to the final.
Yeah.
And then, like, as you said, Kushinov, how many times he's played? 2, 3, 4?
Well, he's not played at all since the FA Cup quarter when he got took off for O'Reilly and everything changed.
And then Vitor Reis, I mean, he's the one.
I think he was Plymouth.
Yeah,
Plymouth was the last time he played, or maybe Leicester he came on for the last few minutes.
Squad, you'd put Lewis in there. And in theory, you'd put McAtee in over Echeverri. But
yeah, well, again, kind of like you've got Rice on the bench. Like, if you've got a right back, you've got a centre back playing right back in Akanji. So if you put Lewis on the bench, if there's a problem with Akanji, say, Lewis can play right back. Or if there's a problem with a centre back, Akanji can move centre back and Lewis can go to right back. And there's Nunes as well. Maybe he didn't want 2 right backs, but Lewis can also play 6 or 8, which he did in the semi-final and did to great effect. And I know, who are we to question Pep? He's had amazing success for 9 years and he's done it using sort of this style of squad management where nobody is safe. However, in all that time of covering Pep, I think that is 2 of the strangest selection decisions he has made. Because to leave 2 players out entirely who have given a lot to sort of the season in the last few weeks and just say it's on the basis of, I just felt sorry for some others who hadn't played. Like, that's football. Like, does he feel sorry for us because we've not made the bench? Like, that's a bit trite, but like it is just football and you have to make these tough decisions. And I'm sure it's been tough on him to leave the other 3 out, but it just felt, it stands out for me among all his years of management.
And the other 3 are players for the future. I know they're playing now. I know they've all played this season, but they were signed. When all those 3 arrived in January, nobody thought, well, we'll see lots of them in the next 6 months. None of those 3 would have been sitting there thinking, well, if we get to the FA Cup final, I'm nailed on to be in the squad. And I just find it really bizarre. And the 2, and I'm not saying it means more to them because they're local lads who've come through the academy, but it probably does.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many FA Cup finals Kushinov watched growing up. And that's not a dig at him, but McAtee and Lewis, they've come through the academy. They've played regular football. Lewis in particular
he was integral to the team every game earlier in the season.
Exactly, yeah. And I know he's got his critics and what have you, but just to leave both of them out of the squad, I found really, really bizarre.
Yeah, and I always get slightly, I always find it slightly funny with like England squad selections, whereby like it's a World Cup and everyone talks about like the 2 players that didn't go, like Jack Grealish, for instance, and you're always like, you're arguing over like numbers 24 and 25 in the
list.
In the list, anyway. Exactly. And we've spent the first 10 minutes discussing like, potentially numbers 19 and 20 on the substitute bench.
Wouldn't have come on.
But it's just it's because it's the club situation, and like McAtee now, he's out of contract in 12 months. He's had a whole season of mixed messages, really, where Pep's been saying, oh yeah, he's really good. I'm just not playing him. And the other week he turned around and said, I kind of wish I'd played McAtee and O'Reilly earlier. And you kind of thought that was one of Pep's more reflective moments and genuine moments of the season. And maybe it was. And I know that there was kind of, McAtee in January thought, why am I still here? And, City rejected a loan move or offers for him in January, and then he's still here. And the last few weeks, people have been thinking he's starting to get a go. He's starting, like he could stay.
Yeah, with De Bruyne leaving as well.
And Gundogan and Bernardo Silva that not 100% staying. And you sort of think, well, Mate, like that one decision kills it.
Yeah.
He's off now, surely.
Yeah.
And also Rico Lewis, like, has not had the season that he wanted to have, but he's still, especially with that semi-final, felt like he's a big part of it. And now for Rico, you must be just be thinking, well, like, if I'm not picked at all for an FA Cup fight, like it matters a lot to these guys.
It'd be interesting to see now on Tuesday what.
Yeah, and it may be that
you couldn't call it, could you? They
it
could
may
both
be
be in
that
the 11.
both of them start.
Yeah.
Right, and then Pep says, well, they were needed for this game, and that's fine, but that takes incredible man management to say, I'm leaving you out of the squad completely for a final. Because as well, they were there. They were like, they travelled down with the team. They'd done all the training with the team. So all they didn't do was they didn't run up and down the touchline for 10 minutes. Like there is a mental element to being prepared for the game, but they basically did everything but sit on the bench. So it wasn't like they were like, oh, you have 3 days off, lads, because I want you fresh for Bournemouth. It was like, you come in, you just have to watch everyone else kind of try and be involved.
Similar for Grealish as well. Like, he must have been sitting there thinking, Claudio Echeverri is coming on for his debut.
Yeah.
As good, and again, he might well be an exceptional talent. And I've seen him play like you have now for 25 mil, or not even that, was it 20 minutes, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he did look quite lively. And Pep spoke after about how he can perhaps find spaces and do things on the edge of the box, which City were looking for. And he could have scored a goal. Dean Henderson made a good save. But if you're Jack Grealish and you're seeing an 18-year-old kid sort of parachuted in, not from nowhere, but certainly...
Yeah, and if you're Jack Grealish's family or Jack Grealish's representatives, you're thinking, what is my client doing on the bench while this fella comes in and jumps over him? Like, Grealish he's not had a great time at City, and the last 2 years have been underwhelming. This year has been bizarre because he's played one game in the Premier League, talking 2025 here, against Leicester, which he scored after 2 minutes and did well. He's played against Leyton Orient in the Cup. He's played against Plymouth and Salford, I think. And he's played against Real Madrid. And it's strange. Did he start against Forest? I can't remember. But he as well has been like kind of the guy in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
You know, they really struggled at Orient and he got them over the line. And he will feel like he has helped being a big part in them getting to the FA Cup final. And then not only does he not start, I don't think anyone would have been surprised on Saturday if he'd started, but not only does he not start, but he doesn't even get on the pitch. He's just kind of like...
When you're chasing a game as well.
Yeah, you need to do something. And Pep says, this guy who's never played for City before, I'd rather put him on. And fine if it's the game situation, but it won't sit well with players. And it kind of had an end of season feel to the game, which is the scheduling issue because it should be the last game of the season, but it's not. But people are starting to look towards the summer already. And if you're any of those players who was really overlooked on the day, then you're thinking towards the summer, thinking, get me out of this club.
Yeah. And that 11, lastly on the 11, because it was 3:30 on Saturday when the 11 was announced. We had a long time to move on with our lives, but I haven't. That 11 felt like that was, right, we've got to score the first goal here because they've basically not picked a midfield. They've packed the forward line, 2 wide players, and for 15 minutes, Palace barely touched the ball.
Yeah.
But as soon as you have that 11, and if you then go one down, that's fit pit. And it was a very Crystal Palace goal to score. Like it was a very good goal, but everybody could kind of see that is how Palace might get at City.
Yeah.
And to go in with that 11, if they go 1-0 up, okay, Palace have got to do something a little bit different. You can control the game a bit more. You can have a few more forward players on. But it was almost like a wild 10 minutes, we're 2-0 down, we need 2 goals in 10 minutes, 11.
Yeah. Well, it was a team that finished against Southampton, I think, which was like, please, can we score? I thought the 11 was wild at the time. I didn't have a problem with it by the end of the game. And when Pep spoke afterwards and sort of said he expected it to be like the Southampton game, so he wanted wingers and he wanted things like that, I think you could see his thinking and see that it came off. Oliver Glasner afterwards said, we play that game 10 times and we win it once. Yeah. And today was the day.
And I think,
fair. having watched them at Southampton be so toothless, they were brilliant from the start. They were really, really good. It's been an issue all season finishing. They haven't scored the goals that they should have done, and also conceding from basically no time at all. They did that. Very good Crystal Palace goal, but there were a number of times when they could have cut it out. But they then went straight back to it. You know, the Henderson non-red card is ridiculous. That should have been a red card. He shouldn't have been on the pitch. But regardless, Marmoush should have scored the penalty. It was a good penalty, but it was probably, you would say, a decent height for Henderson to save it. They weren't good enough in the second half. They weren't able to break Palace down. Palace were very good at disrupting the game, and it might sort of be nostalgia and hindsight, but, you know, there are a lot of comments from City fans afterwards just sort of missing like a big player to step up in the big moments like they've always had, whether that be like a, you know, Riyad Mahrez or Ilkay Gundogan or Kevin De Bruyne at his pomp and things like that. And also, like De Bruyne started last time at Wembley. You sort of think, well, we've been saying it for a while, but it was another performance that kind of said it's the right time for De Bruyne to leave. Think about 2 years ago when City were letting Ilkay Gundogan go, and it was a bit like every game he played, you thought, why are they letting this guy go? He turns up to the FA Cup final, scores a brace, they win the game, he then captains them to the treble, and you think, why? Why are you letting him go? De Bruyne didn't do enough to make anyone think he should be staying, and certainly staying on a high wage. So I didn't have a problem with the team. I thought it was kind of a sensible way to go about it. And on another day, they would have scored, they would have won comfortably, they would have got the red card decision. It would have all been fine. We might even been talking about what a brilliant. Well, that's the thing. It still would have been mad to leave Lewis and McAtee out.
Yeah.
Even if like Echeverry had come on and scored 5, but like I didn't. As wild as the day was, I think when you look back at the team, I think it was a pretty sensible team, despite the sort of not having a midfield.
Yeah, well, that my issue with it is having, and I didn't think I thought Bernardo Silva played okay actually, but he is not a sitter, defensive midfielder, screen. And Palace, the only way Palace were going to, or not the only way, but the main way Palace were going to hurt City was how they scored the goal, and that exposed the lack of a.
Yeah,
and I'm not Kovacic. Kovacic is okay. He's probably not someone you would build a team around next season in that position. But if you'd have had him in there, and I know he was injured, so it's a moot point, but just felt like they needed some control in that area for exactly what happened.
Yeah, but it's hard, isn't it? Because it is one chance, and Palace didn't really create another, and so, you know, the odds of conceding one chance and that chance being to a goal is quite small. And it's odds that City would take every game, and they kind of do take, and it's just one of those things. And not to sort of go all destiny. Pep was asked about destiny after the game, but it did kind of, sometimes you get that feeling in football, like with say the Champions League final when City won it. It felt like it was going to be their night, and everything that happened made it their night. And from, you know, the moment Henderson isn't sent off, you kind of feel like everything's going to end up Palace.
Save. And he's got a good record at saving penalties.
Yeah, but like, how often does it happen when something like that happens and somebody shouldn't be on the pitch and they make the difference? And even, you know, he ends up having a bit of a spat with Pep at full time over time wasting or managing the game, and that the penalty save was great. His other saves were great, but also just the way he took his time over every goal kick and frustrated City and broke up the rhythm. I was very surprised he didn't get man of the match. I know Eze scored. But like Henderson was the hero for Palace, and it was just one of those days when things didn't go City's way.
Yeah, and there isn't, from a performance level, and looking at now at 2 massive games where City are going to need probably 4 points to get top 5, with the goal difference that City have, I think, significantly better than Villa's. performance-wise, like you just said there, and like Oliver Glasner said, 9 times out of 10, City win that game. And I think City played okay. I don't think City played badly.
Yeah.
But they've got to lift themselves now. And this is a ridiculousness of a schedule for City and for Palace. Like Palace want to go out and enjoy winning the FA Cup, and they've got a game against Wolves in 3 days.
Yeah.
City have got to lift themselves for 2 massive games, Bournemouth and Fulham. But there wasn't a significant amount wrong with the performance. It's not like we're sitting here pulling the performance apart and thinking, oh.
No, there wasn't. But all you would say is that, sort of Pep said before the final, he was like, it's not about tactics. It's not about ideas. It's about, mentality. And are you going to go out and win that final? And these are 2 finals. And you often sort of, the teams at the wrong end of the table often play well for loads of their matches. I think Ipswich have dropped like 30 points after the 75th minute or something. Like they've done well for lots of games, and you can say, well, we played really well there, but we just conceded those 2 goals in the end. Or and it's a trait of champions when they don't play well and they win, and at the other end of the table, it's a problem when you do play well and you still don't win, because then what happens when you play badly? And City are, I think they will get top 5. I think they will beat Bournemouth, and I think they will beat Fulham. But there's been enough this season, and Saturday was a case in point, where even when they play well for half a game, play very well for half a game, they lost that half, and they lost that game.
Yeah.
So they, it doesn't matter how they do it, they just have to win.
I think a surprising number of City players stopped to speak to the media after the game.
Yeah.
But for the uninitiated, there's a mix zone, and sometimes you will get a player
you basically try and get players to stop after every game.
Yeah, and sometimes a player is kind of nudged in your direction to stop by the club, and sometimes you have to shout them and hope they turn around and don't pretend they're taking a phone call.
Usually one, often none. And if you've lost, then your chances massively decrease.
Yeah. And how many stopped on?
There were 4 who stopped on.
So what does that?
Which again, kind of.
What does that tell us?
It added to like the end of season feel. Kevin De Bruyne stopped and has still got 2 games to play. He's got a huge farewell on Tuesday, but all the questions are about his future, and will he play at the Club World Cup? Probably not. What are you doing? What are the schools like in Naples? He was asked. What are the, are you going to Chicago instead? And things like this, and that sort of, De Bruyne's future is more important to him than sort of the Club World Cup or the rest of this season, basically.
What are the schools like in Naples?
I think they're good. I mean, Dries Mertens has maybe give him some advice. I think he maybe moved when his kid was born, but they've still got the house there. He felt the need to talk about his future. Bernardo Silva stopped, another who rarely stops to speak to you. And he was talking about, we've learnt this season who I can go to war with and things like that, which is a really loaded comment.
Yeah.
Surprising, because like the whole vibe of this City squad is that you can go to war with everyone. And if he's now saying that there are players in the squad who you can't go to war with, then that is a bit of a worry. Phil Foden stopped after a cameo. Again, like substitutes never ever stop or barely stop. They only really stop if they feel like they've got something to say. Foden kind of wandered over feeling like he had something to say and spoke about a few things that I've just realised are kind of embargoed for later in the week, so I won't spoil you with that. But, Foden also got a few things off his chest.
Stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah. And Ruben Diaz spoke as well. So, yeah, it was interesting in itself that, that so many players in the squad felt like they had something to say.
Yeah, is that a concern? Does that speak a little bit to they've just lost an FA. If it was me and I was a footballer, the last thing I'd want to do, no disrespect, is to come and have 5 minutes chatting to you about how I'd managed to lose that game.
Yes,
but
yeah.
does does that speak to kind of the not dressing room unrest, because that's not really what I mean, but the kind of cracks, I guess, in some foundations, perhaps, or I don't know.
I think so. I think Bernardo's quotes are the most interesting because, you know, you should be able to go to war with everyone in the squad, and that has been the centerpiece of City's success. And I spoke to Ruben Dias a few weeks ago, and he was kind of suggesting that everyone was back together and happy families again. And asked Pep before the game if there had been any difficulties with them all losing so many games and struggling so much, and like, absolutely not. So if Bernardo Silva feels that, then that will need to be listened to and taken into account. And similarly with De Bruyne, it just kind of adds to the sadness of De Bruyne's ending. Not just that he's leaving, but the way he's going. He's being asked questions about, is it not a bit weird that the club haven't spoken to you about the Club World Cup, especially if you're saying you're not going? And he's like, well, yeah, but is what it is. He's been like celebrated as the club's best ever player in 3 days, and he still feels the need to come out and sort of say, yeah, well, the club are being a bit rubbish about this, and this has been a bit rubbish, and it's not, it's not a nice way to go out, is it?
And these are the people who feel like they have something to say and have said it. Whereas I can guarantee you that James Backowski, Rico Lewis, and Jack Greenish, and possibly a couple of others, might also have something to say, but perhaps wisely have not said it. So
yeah. But like with De Bruyne as well, I think it's also a sign with De Bruyne that he is still facing an uncertain situation. The other week he put up a video of him like scoring a goal in training. Like someone said to me, like the number of goals Kevin has scored, the number of great goals Kevin has scored in training over the years, never made it to his Instagram. And suddenly it's like, oh, look at me, I'm a very good footballer. Would you fancy employing me for a season? It's like, he's you stop to speak to us only really because you're nice or because you feel it's a duty. And De Bruyne feels it's a duty more than other, but largely because you want to sort of control a bit of your situation. And De Bruyne, he doesn't know where he's playing next year. So, he's not really doing anything on the pitch to make people think, yeah, I need to pick up the phone and sign Kevin De Bruyne for next season. So he needs to kind of, when his words were basically that he doesn't want to play the Club World Cup in case he gets injured, and then no one will sign him or no one will come in for him. And, that in itself is a sign to clubs to say, yeah, I can get him early, or we don't have to worry about him being in the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
So
and it's all a bit, like you said before, it's just all a bit whatever when Tuesday is going to be what Tuesday is for De Bruyne.
Yeah.
Unless Pep throws another wild selection and doesn't play it. To have this sort of conversation then in 48 hours time from the FA Cup final, 72 hours.
Yeah. But that, I think the schedule has made it all a bit weird.
Yeah.
Pep was being asked after the game, like, oh, it's big summer ahead for you.
And
that would be the question after the FA Cup final. But he's like, well, there's a big Tuesday ahead for me. There's a big Sunday ahead for me. And then we'll think about the summer, thanks. Because, if we don't get in the Champions League, then summer transfer window will be affected by that.
Yeah.
So it all just felt a bit odd, I would say, after the game.
Yep, summed it up in one word there perfectly. And obviously Tuesday and Sunday, two huge games. You're off to speak to Mr. Guardiola this afternoon, and then you'll be able to follow that as you can with the game itself, with all the build-up, with the Phil Foden quotes that on-brand Bajkowski is teased. That will all be available on the usual channels, and we'll be back to do another pod ahead of Fulham on Sunday, or somebody will be back. And yeah, thanks very much for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all soon.